Well, I want to welcome to our set here at the NRA annual meetings in Indianapolis, Indiana, Mr. Chris Cox, Executive Director of NRA's Institute for Legislative Action, and Governor Bobby Jindal from Louisiana. Chris, Governor, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having us.
Absolutely.
Always good to be with you, Cam.
You know, you're looking around here at the thousands, tens of thousands of gun owners who have shown up for the NRA annual meeting. And, Chris, I mean, there's so much to see. There's so much to do here, and this is a celebration of American values. This is a celebration of our rights, but it's more than that, isn't it?
It really is, and you look around and you see tens of thousands of people. It's Freedom's family reunion, and we talk about the excitement, the energy, and what I hope happens is that people look at a lot of great stuff, you know, buy whatever it is that they want to buy, and then the takeaway is that all of this is at risk. This freedom that we celebrate, this freedom that we enjoy, is under attack. As much as we love it, as much as we celebrate it, there are people in this country who want to take it away. There are people in this country who want to make it socially unacceptable to do the things that we love to do, whether it's to hunt or own guns and target shoot, any of it. And what that's going to take is political action. You know, we can celebrate all this, but we've got elections coming up, and you can argue they're the most critical elections in the history of this country, because I believe that the country's at a tipping point, that it's going to go one way or the other. A lot of us feel like things are going wildly in the wrong direction, that this president and Eric Holder and Harry Reid and Nancy Pelosi are moving this country further and further away from what we would even recognize, and want to take it to a place where we wouldn't even recognize it. As NRA members and gun owners, we have an obligation to our kids and grandkids not to pass on our gun collections, but to pass on the freedom so they can start their own gun collection. The only way we're going to do that is to stand up to Barack Obama, stand up to Michael Bloomberg, and elect the right type of elected officials to represent us in these legislative bodies. And the governor and I were joking this morning, and 22 years I've been in this political arena, and I've seen the good, the bad, and the ugly. And every once in a while you see the great. And I'm honored to have Governor Jindal with us today to be here. It's not his first rodeo. He's been to the NRA meetings almost as many as I have. But to have somebody who is willing to put partisan politics aside, bring people together, and do the things we need, not just as gun owners, but as Americans. You know, you want to balance the budget, ask Bobby. He'll tell you how to do it. He does it every year. You want to bring back jobs. You want to do something on education. You want to get government out of your lives. This guy can show people how to do it. So I joked one year that if Congress wants to learn how to do something, they need to call Bobby. And so, again, I'm just really excited, Governor, that you joined us this year again. We're all excited to hear from you this afternoon at the forum. I hope people will make it over to the Lucas Oil Arena and hear from some great speakers, but also from Governor Jindal. So thank you, Governor, for being here.
Well, thank you very much, Chris. Look, I couldn't say it any better than what Chris has just said. Cam, thank you for having us. It is great. You know, it gives me great optimism to see tens of thousands of people here to celebrate freedom. But look, Chris is exactly right. There's never been a more critical time, a more organized opposition that has been more deliberate about taking away our rights. And certainly it starts in November, and yeah, it's the president, and yeah, it's Eric Holder, and yeah, it's Mayor Bloomberg. But we should also remember that this is more than just one election. The reality is the same people that want to take away our guns are the same people that want to take away our health insurance, or the same people that want to tell us what kind of sodas we can drink, are the same people that want to tell us how to live our lives. And they want to take away our religious liberties. This is not an isolated attack on freedom. And I think everybody needs to understand this, in that what has made America an exceptional country is that our founding fathers trusted people. They trusted the American people to make our own decisions, live our own lives. It wasn't a strong federal government that makes America great. Now you've got folks on the left in an unprecedented, coordinated assault on the very freedoms and liberties that we've taken for granted and that we have inherited from our parents, that we owe it to our children. I will say this. I know Bloomberg has announced he's going to spend $50 million coming after our guns, coming after our freedoms. I'd much rather have the people. I'd much rather have the folks you see here in Indianapolis. I'd much rather have the folks in the NRA-ILA and the folks across the country, the regular moms and dads and the regular men and women who go to work every day. I'd much rather have them than Bloomberg's $50 million, and I think we're going to be victorious. But we've got to understand the fight we're in. It's not about one election. It's a much bigger battle.
Absolutely, and it takes place all across the country because, you know, again, as you say, it's not just legislative issues. It's not just litigation. It's not just regulation. There's a cultural attack. We've talked about the attempts to, I call it otherize gun owners, and particularly female gun owners now with Mayor Bloomberg's latest effort to portray gun owners as weird, abnormal, strange, outside of the mainstream. And the reason why they're trying to do that is because, of course, we're none of those things. We are the mainstream. We are middle America. There are tens of millions of gun owners. The people who want to take those rights away, who want to strip us of our freedoms, they're the ones who are out of sync with American values. They're the ones who are out of touch with the American people. But again, as you say, this is a real threat. We can't ignore it. So I guess, Governor, in Louisiana, this is a perfect example of how the right to keep and bear arms and the support for the right to keep and bear arms it's not a partisan issue. There are pro-gun Democrats, there are pro-gun Republicans, there are pro-gun independents. How do we replicate that, and have we replicated that across this country?
Well, look, I'd say a couple of things, Kim. Thanks to Chris's hard work and others, in Louisiana, we did our own constitutional amendment to protect the Second Amendment. Over 70% of the people voted for it. And you're right, across party lines, racial lines, class lines, they came together and said this is important for us. We strengthened the Castle Doctrine, created lifetime concealed carry permits, and did other things as well. But you go back, and Chris said this earlier today, and he's exactly right. This is one of the unfinished pieces of the president's agenda. And let's understand the assault that's coming in our state capitals and across the country. Yeah, you can replicate these successes, but at the same time, there's a national assault on our federal freedoms and rights on the Second Amendment. Remember, the president, when he was campaigning, was caught. He didn't realize he was being taped when he talked about Americans clinging to their guns and religion.
Literally clinging. Oh, yeah.
And look, we're proud in Louisiana to cling to our guns and religion. We got plenty of both, and that's a great thing. We celebrate that. But we sometimes make the mistake of not listening to the president, not listening to Bloomberg, not listening to Holder. Remember, when he was campaigning, he said, in so many words, he basically said he didn't believe in American exceptionalism. He basically said that America should be one in the family of nations. This is a president whose rhetoric suggests he doesn't think that America should uniquely try to be a force for strength and freedom and stability across the world. And that troubles me. But when you look at his actions on the international stage, whether it's Putin and Crimea, whether it was the Red Line, whether it was abandoning some of our allies, whether it's how he's treated folks like in Canada and Israel, when you look at taking out the missile defenders in Czech and Poland, clearly his words have consequences. So when he says that he's coming after, when he talks about trusting the government more than the American people, we need to take that seriously. And so this is a president that is very, very hostile to our Second Amendment rights and liberties and freedoms. Eric Holder, the Department of Justice, has been very hostile. Bloomberg has made it very clear he's in it for the long run. So, yeah, I think we can replicate these success on a state-by-state level. And you see states doing that, and other governors doing that. But I think we've got to be aware of the fact this is not a short-term challenge. This is not and we do need a win in November. And NRA did a phenomenal job in Virginia. NRA-ILA, 65 out of 67. That's a pretty good track record against Bloomberg. And we got to do that again in November. But we got to be ready. The other side is getting ready for a long-term fight to take away our freedoms. And you're right. What they love to do is try to cast us outside the mainstream. They try to demonize folks who are different from that. They do it to people of faith. They do it to conservatives. They do it to gun owners. And we've just got to be ready for a long-term fight here.
Absolutely. Talking with Louisiana Governor Bobby Jindal and Chris Cox, NRA-ILA's Executive Director. Chris, I want to ask you a quick question here. Since this is an election year, there are going to be some states that have, safe races or what we think are safe races. I know that there are activists and there are volunteers, there are grassroots members of the NRA who want to help, and maybe they don't have a competitive race. What's your advice for anybody who wants to make a difference this year?
Well, as Charlton Heston reminded us, find your voice and speak. The governor pointed out a really interesting point about words matter. He talked about the way the president, listen to what the president says. He never refers to the Second Amendment as a fundamental right. He calls it a heritage or tradition. He doesn't refer to self-defense as a fundamental God-given a basic human right. He refers to it as a concept. So take this message. If you believe in your heart that something's not right in our country, take that message and speak it. Speak it to your neighbors, speak it to your friends, email it out. Not all your friends live next door. You can email it out. You can call people. You can volunteer for a campaign. You can get involved at the local level, at the state level. You can find your member of Congress, or you can just go to Bobby's site and find out all these positions and all these issues and what the real answer is, what the real solutions are. The American people are sick and tired of politicians who just pay lip service, whether it's lip service to the Second Amendment, lip service to jobs, lip service to all the things that are important at this critical time in American history. So there are things that can be done. Going to a gun show, I do it. Buying a bunch of high-cap mags, I do it. It's all fun. It's not political action. It's not what's going to save this freedom. What's going to save this freedom is getting involved, getting engaged. Join the National Rifle Association. Get out there and talk to your neighbors and your friends. And collectively, again, as Governor said, I'd rather have tens of millions of NRA supporters across this country than tens of millions of Michael Bloomberg's dollars. And if we do that, and if we recognize what's at stake and we fight together, we're going to be able to make sure that, again, we're not leaving our gun collections to our kids. We're leaving this freedom for them to build their own gun collections. And that's ultimately what it's all about.
Absolutely. Governor, one final question for you. Actually, we got two more. I'll give you a softball question, and then I'll give you a real final question. What are you looking forward to seeing the most here at the NRA annual meetings? There's your softball.
The thing that's really encouraging to me, and I hope the folks that who can't be here in person, it is so great to be here with folks that love freedom, that because I think you're right. The mainstream media, the far left politicians will try to make you feel like you're out of the norm.
Mm-hmm.
If you still go to church on Sunday, if you still try to teach your kids traditional values, if you still take your kids fishing and hunting, and if you own guns in your home, and if you don't look and think the way they do, there must be something wrong with you. So it's great to be in a place filled with tens of thousands of just regular, everyday American people who get up every day, work hard, pay their bills, and just want the government to let them have their freedoms, just want to have their kids have the same freedoms their parents enjoyed. Chris said something very important I want to just echo and emphasize here. At election time, politicians will say what they think we want to hear. And so you'll hear, I'm always amused when you hear the president and Joe Biden and Hillary Clinton talk about the Second Amendment as part of our heritage. And when they talk about hunting being part of our heritage, what they mean is look at those nice photographs of your grandfather with his gun from 1959. That's what they mean. When we talk about the Second Amendment, Chris is exactly right. We're talking about God-given rights that were enshrined in the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. They weren't created by government. They were given to us by our Creator. They were endowed. That was the Founding Fathers recognized. They were recognizing. They were writing down the rights we had. They weren't creating them. It wasn't the federal government's to give to us. And I think that's such an important distinction. So my advice to folks come November is be very careful, because when these politicians are running, they'll try to sound like they believe what we believe, but look at their actions. Don't just listen to their rhetoric.
That's very good advice, because over the past, really ever since Al Gore, if you want to be an elected official, you say you support the Second Amendment. Otherwise, you don't get to be an elected official. So it's not enough to just listen and hear what the politicians saying. You actually have to look at what they've done, and that's why the NRA I think is so important, because you all are keeping track of what the politicians are doing, Chris.
Well, and it's why each and every one of us have a role and a responsibility in protecting this freedom. Because Michael Bloomberg says he supports the Second Amendment.
Right.
Barack Obama says he supports the Second Amendment. I mean, they all say that. We know it's all bogus. But average gun owners who aren't engaged and who aren't educated by their fellow gun owners might not know the difference. And we saw that with John Kerry when he was out shooting skeet and talking about crawling on his belly, deer hunting, all the goofiness that was coming from him. If you didn't know anything about John Kerry, and all you saw was him out shooting skeet, you might think he's a supporter of the Second Amendment. Yep. And NRA members knew better. But we have to go out, each and every one of us, and make sure that there is no such thing as an uneducated gun owner when it comes to these elections. That gun owners know what's at stake. They know the threats. The threats are real. And that for all of our passion that we have for this freedom, it's hard to believe sometimes, but there are people who actually hate it, that feel just as passionately that we need to lose these great traditional freedoms. And it's up to us. It only happens, thankfully, every few generations, but this is one of those times where this is a special moment in our country's history, and it's going to go the way that Governor Jindal wants to lead it, or it's going to go the way President Obama and Michael Bloomberg want to lead it. And we need to all take this very seriously and work together and make sure we move it in the right direction.
Absolutely. There are some, as you say, there are some generations in American history that are called on to do more than others. And, I think this generation has been called on to do more than certainly not our grandfathers, the greatest generation, but you know, there were some Americans who got to live a nice, quiet, complacent life. We don't get to do that. We have to stand up and fight for our freedoms. We have to defend them. And again, I appreciate you joining us on the program, Governor. Hope we can do it again and have a great event this afternoon.
Well, thank you so much for having us. And again, I want to just close by thanking the folks at the NRA, the NRA-ILA, do a phenomenal job, as you noted, not only keeping our elected officials honest, but organizing the voices of ordinary Americans. Thank God for them. If they didn't exist, we'd have to create them. They do a phenomenal job for us every day fighting for our liberties and freedoms.
Thank you so much. Governor Bobby Jindal joined us. Chris Cox, NRA-ILA Executive Director. Thank you, sir, and we'll talk to you both soon.
Great.